So, career planning. A big problem that I see with this is actually a very common one, and I see with a very precise notice that people don't understand the topic of leverage. Now, what do you mean by leverage? See, you need to understand every government in the world basically created the same way of growth, right? You're a kid, you go to school, then there are multiple levels of school. So you go to the first grade, second grade, you can keep going up, right? There is your preschools and all those play groups and all those that. Then once you're graduated from there, you go to the first grade, second grade, eventually until 12th. That's the system that I grew up in India. Now you do that, then there is college, then there is levels of colleges, and then either you have multiple degrees or you could actually go to a job, or you could actually just once you go to the job, then you have just more levels of that same job. So you get promoted, and if you don't get promoted, you get incremented so that you don't run out of patience. That is it. I basically summed up the whole world's education system plus employee system, so corporations, just like that. Why did I do that? And again, how does it relate to a small tiny part that is you? So the thing with these is you want to grow, right? That's why you're here. You're probably listening to my podcast. Like if you don't want to grow, you probably wouldn't listen to my podcast. And you want yourself to be somewhere along the lines of living the life that you want to live, and you don't want it to go out of your control, right? Human beings as a species have this really, really big belonging to control. We want to control. We want some ownership of the idea that we are knowing of the fact that this is where we are going, and we can change it if we like it or if we don't like it, right? And now you go into a problem where you're deciding a career, but you don't have any clue what you want to do. So what I want you to do from this podcast is just understand the basics of what you should look for while you're actually planning out your career. So let's talk about goals. What are your goals when you're planning out a career? Well, it's retirement, an easy retirement and an early retirement, even though I don't believe that should be the goal. But human beings actually have a very high sense of problem solving. So what I mean by that is human beings will create problems if they don't have any to solve. So when you say you want a retirement, what you want is actually a peaceful life. You still would actually crave problems. You would still like stress, a good amount of stress actually in your life. You would like it. The only problem is you cannot have stress, and you cannot have stress while you're actually working on something, but then there is a stress from coming from another part of your life. So let's imagine you have stress on this part of your life, right? Let it be the money part. You cannot manage the amount of money that you have, and you cannot increase it, right? You cannot multiply, you cannot manage money. But now let's say you are 35 and you have a wife, and that is not going well as well. Your family is breaking apart, you're being very, very stressful with both of those. You would like to actually solve one of those problems if there was only one. But now there are a group of them, you get overwhelmed, and now you're actually cussing out on all of them. Human beings without a single problem will always be unproductive. I've noticed too many evidences of that, including me. With my life, if I don't have a problem, I actually am very, very unproductive. So I always give myself a few problems to solve. And by few, I just mean I've only focused on one. Know what will be the next problem after I solve this one, but that is it. So going back to the career planning part, you need problems in your life. So an early retirement, what you're actually asking for is a peaceful life where you have a backup, you have a security of the fact that if whatever I'm doing right now burns down to the ground, absolute zero, ashes, you would still have something in your bank account to show for. And that is why people choose jobs so much. Now, let's kill that all right? And let's just talk about the topic of leverage that I really, really need you to understand. Now, if there is something that I would like you to take away from this podcast, it would probably be leverage. We need to have leverage, more leverage, more leverage, more leverage. So what is leverage? Leverage is the return that you get per unit of time. This is not my definition. It's actually Alex Hermosi. It is to him, a guy that you should listen to if you are not listening to me. So, well, leverage. Another thing that I would like you to understand is retirement is just you asking for a very high amount of leverage. That's what you want. You want enough cash flow to be there, but you don't want it to be very, very highly working, because you know you won't have the energy that you do now. If you're 19 and 20 and you're listening to this, or if you're below that, I know you have absolutely tremendous amount of energy right now. You can take on the world. You can practically become the next World War III. Like, you can basically do that. Yeah, you can. Until I think 28, people have extreme amounts of energy. Even like 25 is where it starts declining, but even then, 28 until 28, you'll have a tremendous, tremendous amounts of energy. You'll be far too energetic, unless that you make it that you always basically stay energized. You make it a part of your identity and a part of your personality. It will decline eventually with time, and eventually with time it will decline, even if it is actually a part, and it is actually the part of your personality. And the thing is, you lose. You will lose if you're always working on the same thing, with the same goal, with the same input, with the same output. So what do I mean by that? Let's say I work on something for 5 hours, and after 5 hours, I get 500 rupees. Very nice. So I can work for 10 hours and I can get 1,000 rupees. That is perfect. Now, let's say Elon Musk, a younger version of Elon Musk, same age as me, same background as me, but he is Elon Musk, so he's very intelligent. So what he'll do is find something. He'll sacrifice his time. He'll probably take those 1,000 rupees and he'll invest it somewhere where it gives him returns without him having to work. Or with him having to work, but he just gets more for his hour. So let's say he now works 5 hours, but he gets 1,000 rupees, and I still have to work 10 hours to get that 1,000 rupees. He'll win. It doesn't matter. He will win. No matter what I do, Elon Musk will still be richer than me, which is actually true in real life as well. So, again, when you come to that conclusion, when you realize that what you truly want is not actually a better job, a better business, a better opportunity, what you want is actually a change where you are getting more for your time and more for your effort that you're currently putting in. Because eventually, you actually really, you basically feel it while you're doing it. You don't have the energy to do it. It's too repetitive now. It's happening again and again. Like, so a thing that I completely, it kept happening during my high school years and with my college as well. The first exam that I gave was the best one. So let's say I have a series of exams coming up, right? Different subjects and all that. The first exam that I gave, I had the highest energy. I put more effort into it, and I always scored good. By the last exam, I would be actually hell bent, and I would actually not study. I won't revise. Like that extra revision that I did for my first exam, yeah, forget it. It's not happening in the last exam, even though the harder exam is the last exam, right? Even though I know more effort is required for the harder exam, for the last exam, I still don't put as much effort. Why? Because I have no energy left. I don't like it. It's too repetitive. I've done it too many times, and I'm like, well, but what's like, I'll get 3 extra marks for that. If I do a revision, maybe it'll become more precise, and the teacher will like me more, and I'll get 3 extra marks. Like, let it be, right? And that's your attitude. What I'm looking for there is for me to have a change, something more exciting, something where I don't have to actually revise extra, 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 and I still the same amount of knowledge, right? So the results I'm getting for my effort must increase over time, because I will always have 24 hours. I will always need to sleep one third of that, somewhere around that, one third of that. So let's say I have 16 hours a day, and that's my limit. That is also Elon Musk's limit. That is also your limit. That is also everybody else's limit. Sure, we can sacrifice our sleep here and there and we can get a few hours in, but unfortunately, you will never actually have the career that you want unless you understand that you need to, from time to time, change the opportunity and the vehicle you're using to grow right now. What do I mean by that? If you're using, let's say, if you're doing a business and that business gives you 1 lakh rupees per month, you need to now invest that 1 lakh and find something that gives you 2 lakhs rupees a month. Otherwise, eventually, due to inflation, that 1 lakh rupees will be now so small that you will not be able to actually use it for anything. You need to grow. Human beings have a desire to grow. Human beings also have a desire to solve problems. If you don't have any problem, your mind will automatically create one. Like, ever had that feeling? Like, ever had, you are very peaceful. You just feel like, I don't know, this doesn't feel right. The humans are actually a very chaotic animal. We need, and like, we need chaos. You cannot live without it. It's almost so. Right now, we are living in one of the best times, probably the best times we've ever lived in. Right, the economy is the best. We have more technology than ever before. We have this thing called internet where you can actually never even know me and hear me, and you can basically remember me. You can find me to your taste, or you can not find me to your taste. Like, you have this option now that you wouldn't have had, let's say, 50 years ago. That is a pretty remarkable thing. 50 years is not actually a lifetime. So in not even a lifetime, we have actually managed to make it so that some guy in USA can hear me right now. Now, I changed that. Let's change that, right? Every generation that has been thinks of this time as the worst. Don't believe me? Go to somebody who's actually working on climate change right now. They will talk about it as if the world is going to end tomorrow. The world is going to end tomorrow. We need to change this right now, or otherwise we die. Earth has been always been in a very chaotic weather. We always change. Like, sometimes it's like, sometimes everything is covered in ice, sometimes everything is covered in lava. Like, everything keeps happening on Earth. Earth is a very chaotic environment. But every generation that has lived have actually cursed on how the situation, how the environment has actually been the worst of all time. And I would argue that the dinosaur time wasn't as good. I mean, if you told me that, okay, you can live, but then again, there will be asteroids in a while, there will be a group of things that will happen, which will make it so that you become basically hunted by every animal in the forest, and all you can do is hide in caves. And actually, you don't have a lot of physique as well. Like, people imagine cavemen to be very strong. They don't, they weren't actually. So you will not have a lot of physique. You won't have a lot of power, and the only thing you have is your brain. So like, go all the best. And yeah, I wouldn't live. Like, I don't think anybody's taking that bet, right? Unless like you somehow find a way to pet dinosaurs and then you become the king of the whole dynasty and you start a new way of history. Unless that happens, which is actually very bizarre. Like, I would love to find a human in the history who somehow find a way to rode a T-Rex. That will be a good movie. Right, Jurassic Park. I learned how to ride a T-Rex. Yeah, get Chris Pratt on that. But if I were to remove all the comedy out of this podcast and I was to come to serious points, you now realize that what you really want is leverage. And even though this is the most chaotic time, it's also the best time, right? People won't stop blaming the times. People won't stop blaming anything that is outside their control, because that means they are not responsible. You are doing it too, and probably I will do it too. Right now on this podcast, I have my sane mind with me, so I'm not. But the truth is, you do actually have everything you need. It's just that you need to change the opportunity vehicle that you currently have. You get bored of colleges. Colleges are criticized because they give you the growth in 4 years what you can have in probably 4 months. It's true. Like, for everybody who's actually trying to get a 1 lakh rupee per month job, because I think that's what the colleges are selling. Like, most colleges are selling that. Like, we'll give you employment where you will get 1 lakh, right? Somewhere around that. So most colleges, like, if you have to do that, just learn these few things: cold outreach, then learn a skill like website designing, graphic designing, logo design, like something that is where you can basically guarantee the result you're going to get, right? Uh, then learn how to do cold outreach, learn how to convert. So learn how to go to video calls and convert, sales that is, negotiation that is, learn how to create offers. And yeah, that is pretty much it. Like, that's enough for 1 lakh per month. That's not like all you have to do is ask for $1,000 for one product, like one service that you sell. That's it. That's still 80K. And if you sell two of those per month and you're doing, let's say, 300 outreaches per month, you can like in 300, I think you can close to, if you have the knowledge that at least like you can find it in my content, you can find it, and then you can DM me if you want. I will actually help you out with that. So again, it's not that hard. And if you do that for 4 months, you'll eventually figure out. Like even if you really suck at it, it'll take you 4 months and then you'll figure it out. It's that simple. Colleges will actually make you work on 1,000 things and then give you that 4 years later. And because the leverage is not changing, you're still just doing the same things, like prepare for this exam, show up on the exam, give the exam, you get bored. And then you lose. So, how do I win? You want to actually have an idea of what you want to do that is fun enough so that you can do it for long enough so that you can become good at it. What do I mean by that? Whatever you try in your life, you will suck at it at first. At first. That means if I were to suddenly think, I'm going to become the next Kobe Bryant, I want to play basketball. Even if I were to devote all my life, I might find myself playing in the NBA, but there is a good amount of quantity that I would have to do in order to get there. There is a good amount of failures that will be there, and it needs to be enjoyable enough for me to go through those failures and repeat it, right? So if I were to change that now, let's say you want to earn money, you want to earn 10 lakhs per month, right? That's your goal here. You want to earn 10 lakhs per month. What you really want is to actually do something that earns you money, even if it's just 100 rupees per month. Like, you don't think about the money at the start because you'll fail. You probably suck. All right. So because you suck, you don't deserve money. What you do deserve is failure. So you'll get it. But if you keep working, eventually you will fail so many times it will become impossible for you to fail again. And that is when, whenever you try, you succeed. And whenever you succeed, you get paid. And when you will get paid, you eventually get so much amount in a month that it accounts to 10 lakhs rupees per month. It is that simple. Now, what you really want is make 30,000, 10,000, your first, basically the first amount of money that you can make in a month, right? You try something out, it works, you figure out how to do it, you do it for long enough, and then it will probably amount to 20, 30, 40, 50K. Once you have that money, I'm not saying go invest it. That doesn't have to be it. Try to figure out how is it that I can make it. So you can probably hire people to do a lot of the stuff you're currently doing. That will be easy. You can basically outsource whatever you're doing with your marketing to somebody who can do it for cheaper. That is, again, a good one. You can probably change your entire business model, which will be a very hard one to do, and probably you shouldn't do it at the start, because at the start your business model is not complete without you hitting at least a crore a month. And you don't know if it is actually the business model you want without you hitting crore a month. You'll probably change it 1,000 times before actually doing that. So it's very hard for you to figure out in the first go. You'll probably have to change that. But what you really want is change that opportunity vehicle. The opportunity that you're currently using that is giving you 30K, 50K, you have to change it so that the same opportunity with the same amount of time that you're putting in, the same amount of effort you're putting in, is also interesting, but it is also so that you earn now 1 lakh, 2 lakh, and eventually you change that vehicle and you get to 4 lakh, 5 lakh. Then eventually you change that vehicle and then you get to 10 lakh. That is what you want. And that is leverage. Leverage comes from the word lever. So lever is basically that. So ever saw a seesaw? Like, we've all been kids, I'm assuming. So like I'm assuming none of you were born out of thin air straight. 18 years old, like 20 years old, like me. Not to say that I was born, like I'm 20 right now. That's why I said that. Any case, so you have the seesaw, right? If you put enough weight to the seesaw, the other side goes up, right? So if you want to lift something, you got to put weight on the seesaw. Let's say that weight is your effort or your sacrifice, right? Efforts and sacrifices. You put one side efforts and sacrifice and you get money at the end. It lifts up money for you, right? Let's say you got a much better lever, a much better efficient lever, and you don't have to put as much efforts and sacrifices, and you still get the same amount of money out. That is a much more productive process than you just doing that for the rest of your life, doing the first approach. Like you're putting efforts and sacrifices in, and you're doing more and more and more, and then you're doing more and more and more, and you're doing more, and eventually you basically have this compiled cash. But again, it's not enough because you've spent years to do what it took probably hours for someone else. Because there are people who are making the amount of money you want to make in your entire lifetimes in hours. I know people who are making crores and crores in hours, and you're not. There are people who are making a million a day. There are people who are making a billion a day, and you're not. That's it. You're not. That means the lever, the seesaw that you're currently putting your efforts and sacrifices on is not giving you money. Now, it could be that you just haven't done the whole efforts and sacrifice and pushing it down part enough. You need to sacrifice more, and then you'll get some money. Right? I do have a very good point against colleges, that colleges work not because colleges need to work or colleges are very nice. They work because eventually students figure out how to earn money on their own. And that is why students earn money, right? Like in 4 years, if you cannot figure out how to earn money, you're probably very bad at this game and you probably should be dependent on someone else for the rest of your life. Right? So again, if you do something for 4 years, obviously you'll figure it out. Obviously. Is it hard for you to read right now? No, it's not, because you've done this for the whole year. Like you've done it for a very long amount of time. So when it comes to career planning, what you really need is actually leverage. You want to change the opportunity vehicle. I have repeated that the whole podcast. Let's change the topic. Another thing that I would like you to know is actually old versus new. What do I mean by that? There is an old approach and there is a new approach in the career planning market. And it changes every few generations. Not even few, actually. I'd say it changes every generation, every single generation. So what happens is your grandparents have a life, and then they see who succeeded in their life, and then they have kids, and then they tell the kids that you should copy the life that this guy had because he succeeded in my generation. So the kids ended up picking the career plans, ended up picking the choices, ended up picking the subjects, ended up picking the colleges that that person chose. And then what ended up happening was, because there was a different time, so you need to understand the economy was different. The supply and demand curve was different in the economy. The government was different. The rules, the laws were different. The personality of each person was different. The general personality of the public was different. What the public wanted was different. Even though the first guy from the grandparents' generation made money, there's a very high chance that the second guy from the next generation will not make as much money. And even if he does, he won't make, like, he will probably basically burn out doing something he doesn't understand how to work. But apparently this works. It worked for him, it should work for me. Why isn't it working? It's not because it's not dialed down according to your times. Right? So a good business to start was clothing business back in the day, or a food business back in the day. We are living in the age of internet right now. If you want to start a food business, start a business like Swiggy, right? You're not using the leverage and the time that you have because you're losing out and you're doing the things that your parents tell you would work. Your parents want to give you the idea that, okay, do this exam and you will succeed, because in their generation, those who did exam became doctors and engineers and then they had a very successful life. It's true. It worked. ED worked. All right, it worked. It doesn't work. It worked. It was for the last generation. And it repeats every generation. Right now, there is a current trend where everybody is telling their kids to actually do business. My father actually did that. And I've been actually doing business. And he's like, why don't you start a startup? You're really into business. Like, I'm already doing that. Right. So uh, when that happened, I realized that people don't actually know whatever is going on in new life, right? In the new terms. So let's say, so yeah, the generation before us, they didn't know how the internet works, right? Your parents are basically asking you how to switch between this app and that app every time they get a new phone. Do you think they will understand that you can make money through a Shopify store? No, they don't. So they will actually tell you to give that exam, go to college, always study, and that is how they will actually think, because that's what they saw working. If they actually understood how the current age works, they will not give you that, simply because they will understand that the leverage in internet and in making a business, a small business on the internet, is much higher than actually studying and going to college for 4 years. That is why you need to do it regardless of why your parents tell you to. There is this generation gap. So a good example of this is actually the country of America. What ended up happening with America was a very simple one. America, after the people returned from World War II, it offered very cheap interest rate on housing loans, right? So you can basically get a house. Because of the cheap interest rate, you can basically loan the whole amount from the bank. You don't have to actually make a lot of money in order to give the interest rate and the EMIs. So you will have some leftover, and from that you can basically live off a peaceful life. So you can basically buy a house for free, right? You have to just pay a little of your salary every now and then. So that created a very good equal amount growth opportunity between the rich and the poor. So those people who were rich before the war and were rich even though they were after, they didn't participate in the war and they didn't send their people to the war, those people had big houses. Suddenly, there were people who were coming back from the war, and suddenly they started creating big houses. So the person with $1 million and the person with $1,000 could essentially live the same life on the outside. Like from the outside, you would think, okay, they both have house. Like one is a slightly bigger one, but they do both have houses. They both have a very comfortable family. They're both making a living. That started a trend of people buying housing loans like crazy, which is actually very confusing. People don't actually think about. So I am actually very pro loan guy. So like I'm not against you taking loans, right? But then again, if you actually look at it in the long term, you realize you're giving away part of your income for a good long term. So if you take a loan, especially something like a housing loan, you will probably give away EMIs for the next 10, 20 years, right? That's how people think. Like that's what I've seen, right? And banks will actually force you to do it. They want you to take loans. That's how they make money. So even if you repay the loan, they'll probably offer you another one, right? And now you actually go into the real topic, right? The real topic of a few generations later, people were still buying houses using the loan, but now the interest rates were changed because they realized that if they kept offering the same interest rates, they will go into bankruptcy, the country of America, not the banks. And because of that, they increased the interest rate, but people were still taking houses because they saw their parents do it and it worked out fine for them. Hence, it must work out fine for us. But it didn't. And guess what happened? Eventually, people lost money. They had been living off a very expensive EMI due to high interest rates. And due to those high interest rates, they could actually never pay off their loan, and eventually they could never have a house, and they ended up working on something that didn't work for the rest of their life. There is always a generation gap. It will be with your kids, it was with you, it will be with your kids' kids, like it will always be there. There are always creative and innovative people that will create technology that will increase your likelihood to make money faster. You can quickly make, like, anybody who knows as much, like anybody who's knows as much as Sam Harris does about AI is very hell bent on creating a business with just AI. Like they don't want to hire, right? So anybody who knows as much as about electric cars as Elon Musk will probably make money. It's not hard for them to make money. But now let's pick out a guy from the 1900s, all right, and put him in the current times. Will he make money even if he was making cars and electric cars? Let's say he was making electric cars and they weren't as good as Teslas, but he was someone with knowledge in his time. Will he make money? Probably not, because the technology has advanced. So he'll need to actually learn first, and then he'll actually have to make the cars and actually have to make money. So again, there is a generation gap that you need to be wary of. You need to be considerate of what your parents are telling you and how it fits in the current times. Does it fit with me, with my personality, with my goals, with my aspirations? Or is it something they are giving me because they want the best for me? Let's not get it wrong. Your parents do want the best for you, but it's just that they are giving it to you because they saw that if they had done it, it would have worked out. So figure it out. And that is it. So to conclude, leverage. You need to know what is leverage, and you need to almost always look out for opportunities that increase the output you are getting for the same effort and the same sacrifices. Once that is done, you need to find the generation gap so that you don't fall into it. What your parents are offering you is something that they should have done in their generation. It's a common theme that I keep seeing again and again. And it's not just with career planning, it's like with everything else. Your parents are still living in their times. They do not live in the current times. They are busy keeping and taking care of you. So they do not see what's working, what's trending. They are not interested in how Twitch streamers are earning millions and millions of dollars. They're not. They're not interested in who's Arpit Bala and how does he make money, like a lot of money, by just cursing at a camera and going on podcasts. It would be very weird to them if you actually played this part of the podcast to them, it would be weird to them. They'll ask, like, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. That's what how they would react. My parents would react the same way. The problem is, it's because they don't understand it, and it's because, well, it wouldn't have worked out in their generation. The technology wasn't there. They're still seeing the world as how they saw it 20 years ago, and it's just not true. It's just not how it works. You need to see it right now. So let's say you're a 10-year-old, let's say you're a 20-year-old, let's say you're a 30-year-old, and let's say you're a 40-year-old. For all four of you, I'll lay out a simple planning that you could do. Let's say you're a 10-year-old, you're about to enter pure peak development of your physical health. So you need to be very, very, very wary of how much protein you're taking. Be always focused on your health, actually. People criticize a lot on how kids don't actually notice their careers and they focus on things like girlfriends and all those things, right? So drugs and all those things. Well, the thing you're asking them to do is actually just study, and study doesn't take that much time. Secondly, it's very repetitive. So if you're asking me to do something repetitive, I will eventually get bored and I'll eventually find something interesting and I'll do that instead. So if you're 10-year-old, I don't think anybody who's 10-year-old will be listening to this podcast. but it's to give an idea and context. If you are a 10-year-old, I would prefer that you focus on your health and you study how people see the world, not the people who are there in your life, not random people, people who are actually successful, who have a happy family, who you can look up to. And well, as a 10-year-old, you probably will not understand who's actually good. Right? For most 10-year-olds, like you basically idolize your father a lot because you see him do all these great things that you don't know how it works. And then you grow up and then you realize he's just a normal guy. He's the average guy. There are people who are making far much more money, who are working far much harder, who are the top 1% of the family of all men. So then you actually demonize your father, right? That will happen. It's actually unavoidable. I have come to the gracious acceptance that that will happen simply because you'll soon accept that you are not born in the best family. As a kid, you think that you are because it feels like it. You're the center of attention, you get everything you want. It basically gives you an illusion that you're born into a family that can afford everything because it affords everything for you. So, as a 10-year-old, if you're growing up, you want to focus on your health so you can actually grow. And then what you want to spend time on is acquiring knowledge. Just acquire knowledge. Actually, don't even focus on anything else but your health. And that's still more productive than doing anything else. That's what I did. I was very busy with football. And thankfully, because of that, I didn't get into anything else. I didn't have the time to. My routine until my high school was getting up at 4 a.m., doing 1 hour of training, getting ready from 5 to 6. At 6:30, my bus would come, sometimes 7, like it depended, like it grew from there because earlier my school was different. And then I would go to the school, I would play in the school team for 1 hour, then I'd study, then I'd come back, then I'd go to the academy, and then I'd return home at 11 a.m., 11 p.m. at night on my cycle from the academy. That was my routine in high school. So that's still 15, 16 years old. If you're 10, just enjoy your life, bro. Have fun. If you're 20, let's say, you want to do what I just did. You want to have a goal. Let's say it's a monetary goal, like I want to get to 1 lakh per month. Or let's say it's a sports based goal. I want to be the best player in this area, in this particular sport, right? Let's say I want to be the best player in India for football, right? So you want to beat Sunil Chetri. Analyze everything Sunil Chetri does, right? And analyze whoever is the best, acquire knowledge from them, listen to every word that they say, and empathize, understand where they're coming from. Empathize is understanding where they are coming from. You want to see how they come to those conclusions so that you can take the lessons they actually give you without the scars that they have to go through to learn those lessons. Right? They have failed countless times to learn those lessons. If they're saying something that doesn't make sense or it doesn't sit right with your values, it probably means that you are too dumb and you don't understand it. Try to understand them so that you can understand it. All right. 30, at 30, you actually should have a family, according to me at least. So if you're in your 30s, you're entering your 30s, or you're in your 30s, have a family. You'll have far too much responsibility to take risk. Another thing that you should do in your 20s, take as much risk as possible. If you're in the early 20s, you take any penny that you have and invest it. Even if it's a very bad growth opportunity that it might not work out, invest it. Now, I'm not saying to gamble. Like, don't go into betting apps and buy Dream 11 teams. Don't do that. But put money. So I genuinely believe I failed my first dropshipping business, right? I was selling t-shirts and I failed it. And I failed because I didn't have the guts to put 20,000. So 20,000 is all I had. And I really do think if I did, so it basically got to a point where I had no money, but those 20,000, and I had the option to actually keep those 20,000 or risk them all and lose them all. And if it doesn't work out, I will not have a single penny left. Guess what myself I did in that time? Actually kept it. I was like, I'll invest it somewhere where I can guarantee the results. The problem is you can never guarantee the results because you don't know how to guarantee the results. The only way you guarantee the results is after you get the results, you figure out, okay, this works. Before getting the results, you cannot actually guarantee the results. There is no guarantees that exist. The only guarantee that exists is after you do the process, it's easier to repeat it. Even then, something might go wrong because, well, the time is changing. And maybe there is some other technology that will change how you work. Like if you told a blacksmith he wouldn't have a job in 2050, he would probably laugh at you in 1950s. But now there are actually very low, like I don't think I see a blacksmith in locally. I don't think I do, not in my area, right? Eventually, shopkeepers will be replaced. Eventually, podcast might be replaced. Who knows? So again, things will always change. Time doesn't like to grow still. You cannot grow still either. Move, change your leverage. Then in your 20s, take a risk as much as possible. Lose every penny you have. I don't care. It will still be better than keeping them because eventually inflation will eat it anyway. And you will probably spend it on something you shouldn't have spent it on, right? So if you actually invested somewhere in business or somewhere in a course, that is still better. If even if it doesn't work out, that is still better. You'll still take lessons from it. In your 30s, you'll probably have a family. So a lot of the income that you make will go into your family. So unless you're very, very rich and you've been very, very successful in your 20s, what you would like to do in your 30s is have a time distribution where you can give time to your family while actually having enough leverage that you should also have a good amount of return and a higher amount of return than what you had in your 20s and your teenage years. If you were working in your teenage years, while giving out a very low proportion of time of your day, because you'll have the family and you'll need to actually cater to them, because family is an investment you make in your old self, because when you're about to die, your kids won't be there. They will pay for it, but they won't be there. Your wife would be. That's why you marry. Marriage for me has always been about two things. It's to see who gets to reproduce in the society. So if you're a complete fool, you don't get to reproduce. If you have done nothing in your life, society doesn't want you to reproduce, so there needs to be a system. So that's why we have this whole status battle that I have a car. Then the guy goes, okay, no, but I have a bigger house. And then eventually the girls end up going to the guy with the bigger house because simply society wants to decide that we are reproducing for the betterment of society. Right? That's why we have this whole system. Every religion is basically a system that is created so that the likelihood of the success of the society or a small family goes on. It keeps going on for the next generation, and the world survives another day. And secondly, it's because you will be very weak when you're old, probably like a toddler, right? My dad and I are discussing this quite often actually, that someone who is very, very old becomes similar to someone who's actually very, very young. Like you see a toddler, he has very insane demands. Like, I want food right now, I don't want to eat this, and he'll not even talk to you. He'll grow very angry when you don't actually do what he wants. Right? Same goes for actually an old guy. Like, I want my newspaper right here, right now. I want it with this. Right? I want my biscuits, like my Parle G, along with the chai. If the Parle G is in there, I don't drink the chai. Right? They are very specific actually, and they grow very, very specific to their knowledge, to their greediness that they have for the things they like. And you will be like that too. It is unavoidable, unfortunately, and somebody who has been there your whole life will be able to manage you. But somebody who's just there because you gave them money probably will not, unless they're really good at their job. So that's why I think people invest in marriages. Marriages are necessary so that you don't have a very bad old life that you curse, and it's because society wants to live another day. Those are the reasons that marriage exists. That's it. So Yeah, what you want to do is have a very high amount of time to leverage ratio. So like if you have a certain amount of time you're inputting in work, you get a lot of return because you want to support multiple people now at that age. Plus you want to also have time in spare so that you can roam around with your family. You can actually invest in them so that in your old age, in your 50s, in your 60s, in your 70s, your wife doesn't go, hey, you didn't take me there, so I'm now leaving you. I sound very red pill, like I sound very far right here. Misogynist. Like I sound like untutored. Like you need to be good. In any case, yeah, that's how I see it, and that's what my plan is. And how I did it was basically simple. At 18, I decided I needed an income, so I started businesses. I did a lot of stuff. I failed a lot of stuff. Eventually, I started making money, and I'm now at a point where I don't have to worry about making money. Like if everything were to burn down to absolute zero, I will still make money. If you were to take away my laptop, my iPad, my house, and I'm just living, I would still be able to make the money if only I have the memories and I have the knowledge that I have. With just that, I have the capacity to make the money. That is the investment I made for the last 2 years. Before that, I was actually a very health oriented guy. I have never drank, I've never smoked, I've never gone out to late night parties because I was actually having a very busy schedule, as I already told you. So I was actually very invested in football. I still am actually. So that takes out a lot of the time of the day. And the leverage is always changing. So I'm still changing my leverage. I will always only play 90 minutes in a match in a football game. The amount of goals I score will only change if I change the way I actually use the techniques and the tools I have on the football field. So if I somehow figure out a way to score directly from the halfway line, I will actually don't have to travel to the T top and score. Right? That is life. It's about your time. It's not about your money. When I started, I told you if there is one thing I would like you to take away from this podcast, it's actually this topic of leverage. Now that I'm ending, I'm going to give you a step that you can do that is actually actionable. So you can take action. Write down all the things that you can do and then write down the return you're getting per hour of time on that thing. It cannot be monetary. It can be monetary, it cannot be monetary, doesn't matter. If you're playing football, how does it affect you emotionally? How does it return in money? How does it return in mental abilities? How does it return in health? Right? If you're playing if you're playing the game of business, how does it return monetary? How does it affect your emotion? How does it affect your stress levels? And how does it affect your mental capacity? Right? Are you become smart? Are you becoming smarter? How does it affect your knowledge? So yeah, do all that. Go on. If you do all that, you'll probably start finding ideas on where your next opportunity vehicle lies, and you can go there. And if you really do want to grow, just follow me. This is why I'm creating it. Grow like me. I am on a journey of growth and I want to see you join me there. So together we grow like LRSR. Right? That is it for today. And I hope you actually enjoyed this. If you didn't, let me know. And I will see you in the next one. Bye bye.